we'll start with this. Well, Queensbury Promotions, that's Frank Warren's promotional company, they announced their March card, and that's a card that's going to be featuring the likes of Daniel Dubois squaring off against Razvan Kojanu. Little experience fight for Daniel Dubois, but I'll tell you that fight is not the reason I'm even discussing this card. You see, there's a much better fight on the undercard of that card, and that's the fight that features the highly touted amateur standout, double gold medalist, Nicola Adams, challenging Areli Muciño, the reigning WBO flyweight champion. And this is a huge step up in competition for Nicola Adams. You gotta realize, Nicola Adams ain't got but 5 professional fights. And in what is her 6th professional fight, she's gonna be challenging for a full version of a world title against an opponent that has far more professional experience than she does. I'll tell you that if not for this fight being on the card itself wouldn't have even got my attention, because Daniel Dubois versus Razvan Kojanu, that's your run-of-the-mill kind of experience fight that a fighter like that has. So there's nothing awe-inspiring about that. But I looked over and I saw and recognized Areli Muciño, and then I looked over and saw she's going to be fighting Nicola Adams, and that, you know, that really grabbed my attention. This is monumental. This is ballsy. So ballsy that you kind of got to ask, are they jumping the gun here? Are they biting off more than they could chew? Is Nicola Adams really ready to square off with somebody as seasoned as Areli Muciño? Areli Muciño, who sports a professional record of 27 wins, 3 losses, and 2 draws. Did these guys make a mistake putting Nicola Adams in this situation so soon in her professional career when she could clearly go on to have several experience fights? Is Nicola Adams ready, or did these guys fuck up? And I dare say, Nicola's got what it takes. So long as she can keep her wits about her, so long as she can keep her cool and not get sucked into a war. Nicola Adams does have the technique, does have the skill set to win this fight. And the reason for that is, look, in spite of all Areli Muciño's professional experience, and she's a grizzled warrior, you understand? She's a vet. She knows what she's doing. She's been around the block. But in spite of all of that, Areli Muciño is a brawler. That's how
she operates.
That's more or less how she operates. She's a brawler. She's looking to come forward, load up her shots, swing for the fences, and land bombs. Understand that for all Areli Muciño's professional experience, she's no finesse fighter. She's no technician. She is not a hard opponent to read. When she steps in the ring, you know what kind of fight she's coming there to fight. And it being that Nicola Adams has such a stellar amateur background, I mean, we ain't just talking about a gold medalist. This is a double gold medalist, you understand. She already has the kind of amateur pedigree to go on and do great things as a professional. The task at hand, what's laid before her ahead of this fight, is keeping her composure, you understand, using the boxing, not allowing the gunslinger to draw you out into a gunfight, rather working around that aggression, outwitting your opponent. That's the task laid before her ahead of this fight.
Keeping your head on straight.
That's really what she's gonna have to do
to win this thing.
Now, I'll tell you, I think it's a fight that Nicola can win. I think that she's got what it takes to win this fight. But don't be fooled like there are no risks involved. Don't tell yourself that this is
devoid of risk,
some kind of run-of-the-mill situation, or that there are no risks involved. Because need I remind you what happened to Natasha Jonas not too long ago? What happened to Natasha Jonas when she squared off against Vivian Obanoff? Vivian Obanoff, who had already been beaten by Chantel Cameron and Katie Taylor. Vivian Obanoff, who you might have thought, you know, it's a nice little experience fight for Natasha, but it's definitely a fight she can win. You might have thought that ahead of the fight, but that's not what happened. Vivian Obanoff starched Natasha Jonas. I mean, I think that was honestly one of the bigger upsets of 2018. And those are the kinds of risks you're running when maybe you put your fighter in a situation that they're not quite ready for. Those are the risks involved in this fight, because Nicola Adams, she ain't got but 5 professional fights. This is going to be her 6th, and she's already contending for a world title. Now, I've no doubts that her handlers must be very confident in her. I've no doubts that her team really believes that she can pull this off.
They must.
Because remember, there are other people on that side of the street, and they turn down world title opportunities left and right for those people that are on that side of the street. I'm talking about Anthony Yard. You know, he gets offered world title opportunities or step-ups in competition on a regular basis, and those opportunities are shot down repeatedly. Why? Because they don't think that guy's ready for that shit. So if we're seeing here that Nicola Adams is also on that same side of the street, but they're willing to go through with the fight, it has to be because they have confidence in her. They believe she's ready. They believe she can do it. And I believe she can do it, but she's got to keep her eyes on the ball. She's got to keep her head in the game. She's got to maintain her composure and not allow Muciño to draw her out into a war, draw her out into a situation where they're trading punches and they're going toe-to-toe. Because in that situation, well, Areli would have the advantage. She's the more seasoned professional. She's the one who's more accustomed to dealing with shots from different kinds of fighters, whereas Nicola Adams...
Still green.
She ain't got but 5 professional fights. This is her 6th. So you could see how that might work to Areli's advantage if it were to happen that way. So, I'm not going to get into a full breakdown, but I will say this is a considerable step up in competition. This is ballsy, but this is a fight that Nicola Adams can win so long as she uses her skill set, maintains her composure, and controls the tempo of the fight. That's what she's got to do. So look out for this in early March. Now, in other news that broke earlier today, get a whiff of this bullshit. The latest bullshit order, courtesy of the WBC. They have now ordered a February 5th deadline for Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury to reach some kind of an agreement. And if by some chance they don't, they will order a purse bid. A purse bid where, rather than the normal 70-30, 70 going to the champion and 30 going to the challenger, this split would be a 60-40 split. 60 for Deontay, 40 for Fury. Now, I saw some people in the comments of one of my previous videos asking me what's my reaction to that. What do I think about that? What do I think? I think that the WBC has been hurting their own credibility for years. As a sanctioning body, as an organization, I think they've been hurting their own credibility for years, and this is just another page in that chapter. Remember, this is the same sanctioning body that named Dominic Breazeale as the mandatory challenger instead of Dillian Whyte, who at the time was number 1.
Y'all remember?
Dylan was number 1, yet somehow Breazeale became the mandatory. But rather than ordering
that fight,
Wilder to fight Breazeale, what do? They allow Fury to challenge for that title. They fast-track him to a title shot after fighting 2 guys ranked nowhere near their top 10 or anybody else's. Yet somehow Fury gets a shot before Breazeale. And now what are they doing? Even though y'all are ones that said Breazeale is the mandatory, guess who's gonna get the fight for the title 2 times?
Not once, but twice.
Here's a hint. It ain't Breazeale. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, well, why would they go as far as doing all of that bullshit? What's the point in all these dumbass orders? Here's the point. They're cleaning up their own mess. First, you guys said that Breazeale is the mandatory. Then you allowed Tyson Fury to fight for that title. Now, you guys know that in terms of sanctioning fees, you'll get bigger sanctioning fees with a Fury rematch than you would with a Breazeale mandated defense. So what you're going to do is you're going to go back on your own order, and you're going to order Deontay Wilder to face Tyson Fury. That way, Breazeale can't impede the process, because Breazeale, right now, what he's thinking is, this is some bullshit. I want my title shot. I'm a mandatory. In order to stop him from getting in the way, they put out another order, because these guys make up their own rules anyway, so they could change them at the drop of a dime.
I'm lying?
Now look, you ain't gotta be Sherlock Holmes, Columbo, Kojak, Telly Savalas. You ain't gotta be any of those guys to see what's going on here. What's been going on here? For some reason or another, Deontay Wilder don't want to give Dillian Whyte a title shot, even at a time when he was ranked as the #1 contender. So, rather than the WBC ordering that fight, regardless of what Deontay Wilder wants, rather than them ordering that fight, they named Breazeale as the mandatory, a guy ranked beneath Dillian. But the only reason they gave it to Breazeale was to make sure that Dillian didn't get it, because Deontay Wilder don't want him to have it. Let's simplify it even more. Breazeale being named as the mandatory didn't mean shit, because it wasn't ever about giving Breazeale the shot. It was all about making sure that Dillian don't get the shot. So Breazeale's sitting there counting his blessings, thinking, oh, all right, I'm the mandatory. I'm gonna get a crack at a world title.
Nope.
But in spite of you being a mandatory, Tyson fought for that same motherfucking title before you, and the WBC was perfectly okay with that. The fight happens, and you may be thinking to yourself, okay, maybe now I'll get the shot, because now they've already had their fight, but nope, they don't want you getting in the way either. So what they're going to do is they're going to order Wilder to fight Fury again, further putting Dominic Breazeale on the back burner. Dominic Breazeale ain't no closer to Wilder's title than Dillian Whyte was. It was all just a game of moving the pieces on the board to accommodate Deontay Wilder and what he wants and what's in the WBC's best interest, which is bigger sanctioning fees. They're basically communicating to the boxing fans that you can go as far as working your way up to the #1 spot in their rankings, and it will mean nothing. Absolutely nothing. They're making a mockery of themselves and their rankings, and just as an organization, they're hurting their own credibility. And they've been doing this for a while now. I mean, look at Jamal Charlo's situation at 160 pounds. same fucking situation, but rather than ordering the champion to defend his title against Jamal, what do? They order Jamal to fight the loser of Golovkin versus Canelo Part 2. This is nothing new. This is what the WBC does. So you want my reaction to this? The WBC is making a joke out of their own rankings and their own organization. They've been doing this for a while now. This is just another page in that chapter. This is nothing new. And the only reason they're doing it is because they know Wilder versus Fury brings them bigger sanctioning fees. And they don't want anything getting in the way of those sanctioning fees. Not even a guy who they already named as the mandatory challenger. Even though all of that shit came from them, hey, fuck that. We want them sanctioning fees. So you gotta wait. That's all it is. It's more of the same shenanigans from those guys, man. It's more the same. These guys pick and choose when they want to do their job. To be honest, I'm not even fucking surprised. If it wasn't for people asking me to talk about it, I wouldn't even talk about it because I expect no less from them.
What they do.
You really got to sit here and ask yourself a question. From the time that Tyson Fury came back and fought Sefer Seferi and Pianeta, from the time those two fights happened, what exactly did Tyson Fury do that warrants him getting a title shot? Not a lot. But Wilder decided to give him one, and you know what? That's cool. Voluntary defense? Whatever. Okay, fine. But now you guys are going as far as ordering that fight, even though you have a mandatory, even though you have a #1 contender. You as an organization that ranks fighters, stages championship fights, you guys are going as far now as ordering that fight, even though Fury has done absolutely nothing to earn that title shot. There were already guys in line ahead of him before he even decided to come back.
Yeah, I know that.
And this is the belt that you guys like to call the most prestigious belt in boxing. Let me tell you something. Maybe it's the most recognizable. Maybe it's one of the more popular belts. But in terms of prestige, the amount of damage that they've done to their own credibility sucks all the prestige out of the shit. That this isn't even about prestige anymore.
Yeah, crooked as shit.
What the fuck is prestigious about how you're running your organization when you rewrite your own rules every fucking month? It's more the same, man. It's more the same. In other news, apparently Joe Joyce is going to be squaring off against Stiverne on the undercard for the James DeGale versus Chris Eubank fight
in February,
coming up in a few weeks. And, you know, what do I think about the fight? There's a few ways you got to look at this thing. For Joe Joyce, it's the right kind of fight. For Joe, it's the right kind of fight against a former champion that can give you experience, which you need. So in that way, it's the right kind of fight. But in terms of dolling up the card, you know, for the people that are going to have to pay for this thing, because while here stateside, the fight is going to be free, over there in the UK, that thing's going to be a pay-per-view. So in terms of a pay-per-view worthy card, I don't really feel that Joe Joyce versus Stiverne does much to make the card more attractive, more appealing. We know that Joe Joyce, you know, he was saying that he wants a Luis Ortiz fight, but apparently Luis Ortiz is going to be squaring off against Christian Hammer. And they got that penciled in for March 2nd at the Barclays. Sidebar, I just want to say, I do think that Joe Joyce the Juggernaut is going to steamroll Stiverne, and I also think that Luis Ortiz is going to steamroll Christian Hammer. Those two fights are not the kind of fights that really require a breakdown. The safe bet is Luis Ortiz starches Christian Hammer, and the safe bet is Joe Joyce starches an aging Stiverne.
Thanks, Captain Obvious.
Last time we saw Stiverne, I'm not even sure the man threw a punch, okay? So, I mean, just sidebar. Those are my picks for those fights. I don't want to have to spend 15 minutes breaking down what are obvious answers. Back to the point. I think that a Joe Joyce versus Luis Ortiz fight, if they would have put that on the DeGale versus Eubank card, I think it would have dolled it up even more. However, it really would have been a huge risk for Joe Joyce to fight somebody like Luis Ortiz, because Joe Joyce ain't got a lot of fights. He ain't been a professional boxer for very long. He does have a good amateur background, but this guy does not have a lot of professional fights. So for you to go from fighting a Joe Hanks to a Luis Ortiz, there are risks involved. However, those risks would have done a great service to dolling up that DeGale versus Eubank card. I think that that really would have made the card itself more appealing. I think it would have, you know, made it more of a pay-per-view worthy card. Nevertheless, that's the way the cookie crumbles. I'm not necessarily complaining about either of those fights because these guys got to keep busy at the end of the day. They can't all be involved in mega fights fight by fight, you understand. I'm not a big complainer. I'm just saying that in terms of marketing Eubank versus DeGale as a pay-per-view, that fight and the intrigue associated with that fight, where you don't know if Joe Joyce is ready for a fight like that yet, and you don't know if Father Time will catch up to Luis Ortiz in that fight, that kind of intrigue that really would go a long way in selling a DeGale versus Eubank fight. Now, I reiterate, for us in America, it's a non-issue. That ain't no pay-per-view over here. They know better. Don't try to sell that shit to us. But in the UK, that's actually a pay-per-view. And even though the UK fans know those guys, you know, what I'm seeing is a lot of UK fans saying, that's not a pay-per-view worthy fight, man. Like, what the fuck are you guys doing?
Come on, fellas.
So, you know. All I'm saying is, given some of the recent comments regarding that fight being sold as a pay-per-view across the pond, it would have helped to have Joe Joyce face Luis Ortiz. There might have been some risks involved for Joe Joyce, but those risks are exactly what makes it an appealing and attractive fight. And I think DeGale versus Eubank Jr. could use that selling point. They could use that to doll up their card, because right now, you got these two guys fighting for the IBO title. I mean, come on.